StrayAllDay.com.
You are now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day, to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques, all underneath the umbrella, all go under the umbrella of one unifying philosophy that is called work on your game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is I'm going to give you a simple way that you can get ahead in life. It is doing the opposite of what everyone else does. I told you already a few episodes back, probably a month ago, about how Earl Nightingale talked about this in his seminal tape. This is the tape that kind of made his name known, which was called The Strangest Secret. Any of you who, if you heard this episode, you should have already listened to The Strangest Secret. You can find it on any of your favorite streaming audio apps: Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, Apple Music. Is on there and it's free. It's on there just like any other song, any like the latest Future or Drake album is on there. You can get Earl Nightingale, just look his name up. It's on YouTube as well. It's only 36 minutes, so you should listen to it at least one time for your own success in life. I guarantee this. Listening to it will help you get to success more than listening to the latest Drake single will get you to success. And one of the things that Earl Nightingale talked about is the reason why many people fail in life is because they conform. They look around and see what everybody else is doing. They just follow everyone else. The problem is most people are not successful. So if you follow most people, you're not going to get to success. So a simple way to get to success is by deductive reasoning. Do the opposite of what everybody else does. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. Point number one. And before I actually get into that, let me tell you, when I have a daily motivation text I send out free of charge to everyone who's in my texting community, you would like to receive that text. And I know you do. All you got to do is text me at my number, which is 305-384-6894. And every day when I send the daily motivation text message, you will receive it straight to your phone, free of charge, guaranteed to keep you focused, sharp, and on point through your days. And you'll get a new one every single day. So text me at that number right now, and you'll be getting that daily motivation the next one that comes out. And you can you'll get responses from me to the text that you send out. So you're not just texting with a bot or getting bot text. You are actually going to be getting a message from me, and you'll be able to respond to any one of those texts and talk directly to me. So that number is down below in the description. Now we'll get to point number one. Topic again today is simple way to get ahead is doing the opposite of everyone else. I told you back in episode 1025 that the opportunity is always in the opposites. So if you didn't listen to 1025, we'll listen to that. And now here we are 1,200 days later, nearly four years later, talking about this from a different angle. First point is this: most people are average. Most people are average. Most people live their lives by doing what they see other people doing, and they justify it by saying out loud or to themselves, and I've seen both, hey, this is what everyone else is doing, so that's why they're doing it. This is both by definition, because I've heard people say this, and my subjective reasoning, because I see people doing it. So knowing this, just doing differently from most people will make you eligible for a different set of results. Eligible doesn't guarantee you're going to get them, but you become eligible for them. It is hard, however, for most people to do the opposite of everyone else because we are raised and socialized to follow the crowd and do what is necessary to blend in and not stand out. I talked about this in episodes 2206 and 2207. Talked about it in episodes 3 and 4 days ago about qualitative change versus quantitative change. I talk about this all the time. I talked about it probably 100 times in the history of this show, that we are raised and socialized to blend in. When you were built, you were created to be different. That's why there is no one in the history of mankind before you, now, nor will there be after you, who is exactly like you. They don't have your exact combination of thoughts, ideas, strengths, weaknesses, quirks, and idiosyncrasies, habits, fingerprints. Nobody is exactly like you. So why would you spend your life trying to blend in and be like other people? It doesn't quite make sense. This is why thinking for yourself and acting on your own volition are easy to say. They're ideas that are easy for people to talk about and easy for people to understand, but very hard to execute on. All right, this is why being different, you can get ostracized from a community for being too much different from other people, simply because everybody's been trained to be exactly the same. Now, there are points where being similar to other people in some areas do make sense. Like it makes sense to, if there's cars coming and they have the light, they have the green light, you probably shouldn't just run into traffic just to prove that you're different, because then now you're gambling with your life. But there are other areas in life, like just expressing your own uniqueness, whatever that may be, where you should stand out, because otherwise you're going to blend into the wallpaper and be easily forgotten. You become a commodity, and commodities are fungible, easily replaceable. Their value is very low. And I don't think you consider yourself a low value individual. So many people are raised, socialized, and live their whole lives following the crowd, doing what's necessary to blend in and not stand out, doing it on purpose. And this is why thinking for yourself, again, acting on your own volition, are hard to execute, even though everyone understands it and many people talk about it, but then they go do the exact opposite. Peer pressure has a very strong pull, because humans, we are social creatures, and we want to get along with other people. We want to feel like we're a part of a circle. Nobody wants to feel isolated. Isolation is dangerous. Robert Greene talked about that in the 48 Laws of Power. And sometimes, in order to not feel isolated, we try to blend in on purpose. We tamp down our own uniquenesses and our own differences just so we can seem like we are more like other people. And there are times to do this strategically, but this should not become your habit for your entire life, because then you'll die and you'll be forgotten. And again, does any of you want to live your whole life, die, and then just be completely forgotten as if you were never there? All right, peer pressure has that strong pull, but also remember the law of entropy was the second law of thermodynamics, that the gravity of life is always pulling you back towards that average. So your job in life is to push against it. This is again a law of science, is that gravity is always trying to pull you towards being like everybody else. And if you want to be different from other people, then you have to build the muscle of being different. There's an emotional, spiritual, mental muscle that must be built in order for you to express that uniqueness and express that difference, that you shouldn't even need this muscle. In a perfect world, utopian society, you would not need this muscle, because we all would come out of the womb unique, which we all did. But because you've been socialized your entire life, basically from the time you were born all the way up, at least through your years of schooling, and depending on what you did after school, maybe still after that, some of you still being socialized this way even to this very day. You're in your 30s, 40s, or 50s. But let's say you got out of school and you decided to be unique at that point. All right, now you got to fight against 22 years of socialization. So this is why you have to fight against it. You shouldn't have to, if everything, again, in the utopian society, but this ain't that. So you have to fight against this and kind of get your uniqueness back. You have to fight for your uniqueness to take it back to where it was when you were how you were originally made. Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is simple way to get ahead is doing the opposite of everyone else. Let's look at what most people do, because this will help you give you a baseline for understanding this point even better. Most people don't do any real work on themselves. Most people don't do real work on themselves. What most people do is they try to maintain the status quo while watching life move ahead without them. Most people try to stay in the same spot while everything else in life just moves on and leaves them behind. Most people don't take ownership of their situation, which means they have no chance to grab the power to change their situation. Understand, you cannot change anything for which you are not taking responsibility. Now, you can be a subject of change of a situation in which you're not taking responsibility, but you cannot change it yourself unless you take full responsibility. In other words, if I do absolutely nothing, if I just sit around and do absolutely nothing about my career, where my business is going, and some changes happen underneath my feet, the ground shifts under my feet, and now my business no longer exists, or nobody's interested in my products anymore because I'm selling something that has become obsolete. I was subject to the change, but it's not because I did anything. I didn't do anything to make the change. The change just happened without me. And I just happen to be a recipient of the change, whatever it may be, positive, negative, neutral, but it's not because I did anything consciously to make the change happen. If you want to be the agent of change, an agent of change in anything you're doing in life, the first step to making change is taking responsibility for the situation as it is, so that you can change it to what you wish it to be. That is what responsibility is about. But you have to be willing to take the responsibility in order to take power. Most people want power. Very few people go out searching for responsibility, but understand they come in a package deal. You can't have one without the other. Anyone who takes on responsibility has, by definition, power. because you're responsible for something. When you're responsible for something, you have power over it. And when you have power, you must own the responsibility for the situation because you're a person in power. Many people don't do that, so they don't have power to change. They don't take responsibility, thus they get no power. And here's the cherry on top. They follow what everyone else does. Everyone else as a whole is average. The average person is average. This is why they call it the average person. Most people are average by definition. So while we do have the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer, everybody's heard those phrases. All right, here's what we also have that nobody ever says. We have the average getting averager. Averager is not even a word, but it is now in the Work on Your Game dictionary. The mediocre becoming mediocre. All right. Average just get more average because they're all following each other. So they have no choice but to stay average and become even more average because they're just following each other's lead. Moving on to point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is simple way to get ahead, doing the opposite of everyone else. Number 3, this is a relatively simple idea, isn't it? Doing the opposite of everyone else. I mean, you see what they're doing and you're smart enough, you're listening to this, that you know what opposite means. You can just do the opposite. All right, whatever they're doing, let me do something different from what they're doing. So why does it sound and feel so radical at the same time that you're agreeing that it's pretty simple? It's a good question, isn't it? Since you know this is simple, why does it feel so radical? Why does it seem so out there to actually do this? Like, again, this is something I say all the time on the show. You logically understand everything that I'm saying, but do you emotionally accept it? Do you emotionally grasp it? And would you actually put this to use? Where could you actually do the opposite of what everybody else is doing? And I'm not talking about things that you're already doing. I'm talking about areas in which you're not. Areas in which you might be doing similar to other people, but you want to get a different result. Where could you do the opposite? That's my question. So why does it feel and sound so radical at the same time that it seems so simple? The reason is because we as social creatures feel extremely uncomfortable when we step outside of the group. We are wired to want to be part of the group and to be accepted into the group, whatever the group happens to be in whatever community or environment that we're in. This is why people follow crowds, even when they can see that where the crowd is going is not the thing that they need to be doing, but they'll follow the crowd anyway. Why? Because, well, what else are they going to do? We are conditioned to do this. We're conditioned to follow. Most people would rather be part of the group and be wrong than be outside of the group and be right. That one I need to repeat. Most people would rather be part of the group and be wrong than be outside of the group and be right. Peer pressure is a mofo, as they say. And here's another revelation. Many people judge right and wrong. Now people talk about something being right and something being wrong. No, most people judge right and wrong. Let me give you a hint. They don't judge it based on whether it is accurate or they don't judge it objectively and based on accuracy. Most people judge right and wrong based on what everybody else is saying and doing. All right, you're right because what you're saying and doing, everybody else agrees with, and you're wrong because what you're saying and doing, nobody agrees with. All right, we call this the bandwagon logical fallacy. So logical fallacy is called the bandwagon fallacy. The bandwagon fallacy states that you are believing or arguing that something is correct simply because a bunch of other people agree with it, or arguing that something is incorrect because a bunch of other people disagree with it. This is a logical fallacy. In other words, it's an inaccurate formula. Having a bunch of people agree with you does not make you right. It might just make you a follower. Sometimes it makes you right. Actually, let me back up. Sometimes it can be right to have the same opinion as other people, but not because everybody else believes it, because there's an accurate, objective measure of what makes it right that you can lay out and explain. That's what makes something right. Everybody else doing it is not a justification for anything. Did everyone hear that? Everyone else doing, believing, or saying something does not justify the thing. All it does is mean a bunch of people are doing it, believing it, and saying it. It doesn't mean anything else. It does not make it true. It doesn't make it false. This is why accurate thinking matters so much. This is why objectivity matters. This is why independent thinking. This is why critical thinking. This is why all these skills matter so much. Because if all you're basing your decision on is what everybody else is doing, sometimes you may be lucky and have chosen the right thing, but other times you're going to be wrong and you're going to choose the wrong thing. You're going to be unlucky and choose the wrong thing. Don't base your decisions on what everybody else is doing. Base your decision on accurate formulas. If you don't know how to come up with an accurate formula, I just gave you a bunch of episodes on accurate formulas that I've done here on the show. Episode 2167, 2163, 2154, and 2113. Go listen to all 4. They're listed down below in the show notes, or go to workonyourgamepodcast.com and listen to them yourself. They are all there. You need to know what an accurate formula is and be able to discern when you're looking at one versus when you're not. If you can't, then you're probably operating by inaccurate formulas because you're following what everybody else is doing, and most people are average. So when, quote unquote, everyone has the wrong answers, the masses of people see that wrong answer as the right answer. Why? Because everyone else has that answer. So when you step outside of following the crowd, understand this is not an intellectual challenge of your smartness, how smart you are, whether you're following the crowd or not. It's an emotional challenge of what you use as a frame of reference. Is your frame of reference what they say, or is your frame of reference what is accurate and objectively correct? Most people go with the first one. Even though almost everybody says they would go with the second one, most people go with the first one. What they say, not what's accurate and objectively correct. So my question is, what is your goal? Because this is how you decide which way you're going to go. What is your goal? If your goal is to be accepted and be part of the group and have more people like you, or at least think that they like you, fine. Just know that on average, you're going to have to sacrifice some of your possible success in order to be accepted by the crowd. As long as you're okay with that, I'm okay with that. You have to sacrifice some success in order to be accepted by the crowd, if that's your goal. Now, it's vice versa for doing the opposite of the crowd. You sacrifice some acceptance in order to defer to accuracy and objectivity. For example, I talked about how this podcast, this very show, the Work on Your Game Masterclass, is not, as of the last time that I checked, last time I looked was maybe 2 weeks ago, is not listed in the Apple Podcast top 200 in the education category, which is damn near impossible because I know what kind of stats the average podcast gets. According to research that I did myself, the top podcasts get around 3,000 listens per episode. And there are more podcasts coming into the space every single day. Now, there are some exceptionally high ones. Let's say like a Joe Rogan or Tim Ferriss. They might do 1 million listens per episode. But the average solid high-level podcast does about 3,000 downloads an episode. And let's just say 5,000 even at a higher level than that. This show, the Work on Your Game Masterclass, does over 200,000 downloads a month. In the month of May 2022, I'm recording this in early June, but in the month of May, this show did 230,000 listens. 230,000 people listened to the show in the month of May 2022. Let me see if I can get an exact number here. Yes, a little bit more than 230,000 listen to the show. So far this year, let's look at that custom range, because that would give us, we'll just say the first 5 months of the year, January, February, March, April, and May. 2022, Work on Your Game Masterclass, 945,000 listens to the show in 5 months. 945,000 by 5 months. So let's just do some math here. That's 189,000 listens a month. And I put out an episode every single day. So let's just divide that by 30 days. We're looking at 6,000 listens a month. That's double what statistics say the average top show does. So you telling me I'm not in the top 200 in the category? Of course we're in the top 200 in terms of listens. They don't have us in there simply because there's certain things that I've said. The group, Apple being in Silicon Valley, Apple being woke, Apple going with all the LGBTQ stuff, Apple going with a whole bunch of the CRT and BLM and all of that stuff that I have clearly stated that I'm not aligned with. All right, you think that has something to do with it? This is what I just told you. If you want to be part of the group, you're going to have to sacrifice some of your objectivity and accuracy. And if you want to be accurate, you got to sacrifice some of the group acceptance. You got to make a choice which one you want. If you don't make a choice, then the choice will be made for you. All right, this is the game that you're in. All right, now that I said all that, let's recap today's class, which is a simple way to get ahead, doing the opposite of everyone else. Number one, most people are average. Most people live their lives by doing what they see other people doing. They justify it by saying, hey, this is what everybody else is doing, so it must make sense. So we're social creatures, so this does make sense for certain people. All right, understanding that doing differently from what everybody else does makes you eligible for a different set of results. This is why thinking for yourself and acting on your own volition are easy to say, but hard to do simply because we are raised and socialized to stand out and follow the crowd. Point number two, let's look at what most people do, which is they don't do any real work on themselves. Most people just want to maintain the status quo and they don't mind that life passes them by, even though they wouldn't say that on top. and then they go follow what everybody else does. Everyone else as a whole is average as well. So while we have the rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer, we also have the average getting more average because they're all following each other. Number three is a relatively simple idea, doing the opposite of everyone else. The reason why it sounds and feels so radical is because we are extremely uncomfortable with being outside of the group because we've been hardwired to socialize and do whatever it takes to stay in the group. Back in the caveman days, you were outside of the group. That meant you would starve to death or be killed by a rival tribe or by some animal. If you were in the crowd, you were safe. But our world is not quite like that anymore. Even though you don't want to be isolated from everybody, you have to have the courage to do what stands out from the average people. And what happens is, once you cross that chasm, you'll be socializing with the higher level individuals, but you got to be willing to step outside of being with the average in order to get to where the higher level people are, and just deal with that small period of time in which you don't have it. You're kind of a man or a woman without a country. And this is the challenge for many people. Many people judge right and wrong not on objective, accurate formulas. Most people don't even know what an accurate formula is. Most people judge right and wrong based on what everyone else is saying. So when everyone has the wrong answers, most people see that as the right answer because that's what everyone else is saying. So stepping outside of following the crowd is not an intellectual challenge. It's not a challenge of how smart you are. It's an emotional challenge of what you are using as a frame of reference. Just know that if you want to be accepted, you will sacrifice some success so you can be accepted. And if you want to be successful, you got to sacrifice some acceptance. This is the way that the game is. This is the game that you're in. I didn't make up the game. I'm just telling you what the rules are and giving you your options for how you can play it. All that said, two things for you to do. Number one, text me so you get my daily motivation every day straight to your phone. My number is 305-384-6894. And go to workonyourgameuniversity.com where you can sign up to work with me directly. You can join my Bulletproof Mastermind to work with me in my group program where I do a live call every single week and a bunch of trainings during the week. And my one-on-one training, one-on-one coaching rather. If you want to work with me one-on-one, there's a link at the top of that page where you can sign up for a free Zoom call with me. We'll talk about where you're at, where you want to go, and how it can possibly help you. Both options are at workonyourgameuniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre, all